She hears the paws moving across the room. She's just waiting to hear a blood-curdling scream from her little brother as soon as he sees this thing and is scarred for life. I've always been pretty fascinated with local folklore. I've always thought it was such a cool thing that you could go to any city or any town anywhere in the world and they have their own unique stories that everyone, all of the locals seem to know. Growing up in my hometown, there was a local legend that the owner of an ice cream shop used to have the body of an alien somewhere in the basement of the store. And some local folk tales like that are just sort of meant to be kind of a weird thing that kids tell each other. But what happens when you have folk tales that seem to transcend borders, that seem to pop up in different places all over the world? And that's what we're looking at today, specifically the topic of demon dogs. The tale is that you're walking down a street either late at night or early in the morning. Maybe it's misty, maybe there's no one else out on the street. And out of the darkness, you see two glowing eyes looking at you. As you look closer, you see that these two eyes actually belong to a massive black dog with huge fangs. Maybe he just watches you, maybe he lunges at you. The stories always differ. But stories about these black dogs have popped up all over the world, from the United Kingdom to mainland Europe, to North America, to South America, and they have a mythology of their own. Some people say that these gigantic, evil black dogs are servants of the devil himself, and they've come to grab you and take you back to the underworld. Some people say that these dogs are associated with literal death, and that if you have an encounter with one of these dogs, either you or somebody that you care about is going to die soon. Regardless, most people can agree that run-ins with these black dogs are not a good thing. The people who purportedly have experienced these black dogs say they felt nothing but absolute terror when they encountered them. As I was researching for this story, I came across literally dozens of reportedly true stories about run-ins with these black dogs. The one I selected, I think, best represents what these stories are all about. As you'll see, every minute of this story only gets crazier and crazier and crazier, and it has an ending that is absolutely insane. So please stick with it to the end. For this story, let's travel to the United Kingdom. A young girl, 4 years old, is living at a home with her parents and her little brother, who's 3 years younger than her. They're living in a house that's very typical for the middle class. On the bottom floor, you have the living room and the kitchen. The second floor, you have bedrooms. And then the third floor, you have an attic. But the way that the attic was set up was a little bit different than most attics, where it's just either all furnished and all looks nice, or it's all storage space. The front half of the attic, so the part of the attic that's facing toward the street, was all furnished and it was nice, and that's where the young girl slept. She slept in this part of the attic because the family had taken the time to make it nice, and it gave her kind of a space that she felt like was her own, that she could do whatever she wanted with. The back half of the attic was not finished, so it was all wooden beams and planks and rusty nails and that sort of thing. And down the middle of the house, so the width of the house, was a wall. And the family had put up that wall so that they would be able to keep their children out of the unfinished portion of the attic. And at the base of the wall was a small hatch, so maybe only 3 feet high by 2 feet wide, just big enough that somebody could crawl through and get to the unfinished portion of the attic if they needed to, but certainly not large enough that somebody could actually walk through the hatch. This young girl had a lot of difficulties with sleeping as a child. She remembers so many nights where she would just lay awake with her eyes open and a terrible feeling of dread that was just pushing on her chest. And she was never able to account for it. She was never able to understand exactly why she was feeling that way, but she just always felt like something was wrong. And I think we've probably all felt that way, especially when we were children. You're scared of what's in the closet, or you're scared that you're going to see the face of a stranger looking through your window, or whatever it happens to be. On one particular night, she's 4 years old. She's laying awake. It's late at night, 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning. She feels that feeling of dread. She hasn't slept a wink. And she hears something strange. She hears the hatch click open. Now, she knew that her father always kept this hatch locked because he didn't want his kids getting in there and getting hurt or getting stuck inside or anything like that. So when she hears that click of the hatch opening, that dread starts to turn to panic. She has no idea how that could be happening. She knows that she's the only one up in the attic. Her parents and her little brother, they both sleep on the second floor. She's too terrified to move at first. But eventually she figures she has to see why the hatch opened. So she summons all of her strength and she lifts up her head and she looks over toward the hatch, and what she sees is a giant black dog with red eyes staring at her. She's absolutely petrified again. She's frozen in fear. She can't move a muscle. She can't look away. She can't do anything. She's too scared. She knows that she needs to call for her parents and they'll come and rescue her. But when she opens her mouth, nothing comes out. She's only staring at this dog for a few moments before it lunges across the room and it jumps onto the bed, and with this massive mouth and these huge fangs, it grabs onto her leg. She starts trying to fight. She starts throwing punches at the dog and trying to hit it and trying to pull its fur and do anything that she can to get this dog off of her, but it seems like nothing that she does is having any sort of effect. The dog, with her leg in its mouth, starts dragging her off of the bed and onto the floor and starts pulling her toward the hatch to go to the unfinished part of the attic. When she realizes this, she becomes even more panicked, and she's finally able to scream out at the top of her lungs as loud as she can for her parents. And as soon as she screams out, as soon as the noise leaves her mouth, the dog releases its grip, and all she can hear is heavy footprints going off into the darkness. Only a few seconds later, the lights turn on, and thank God, it's her father. Her parents try to convince her, "Sweetie, you were sleepwalking. It was a nightmare. It's nothing to worry about. We came in. There was no dog. There was no nothing. The hatch was closed. It was locked, just like I left it. There was nothing strange. I know sometimes those nightmares can feel real, but I promise you, nothing was going to hurt you. It was all in your head." But she knows it wasn't. She knows it was real. She could remember how the head of the dog felt against her fist. She remembers how the coarse fur felt when she was trying to pull at it to get the dog off of her. To her, it was very real. Over the next few years of her life, she would have more encounters with the dog. And this was always before she fell asleep. And this is one of the ways that she knew she wasn't dreaming. It wasn't that she fell asleep and then she was awoken by the dog. And sometimes when you get pulled out of sleep too quickly, reality and dreams sort of blend together, but that wasn't the case. The only times where she ever saw the dog was when she had been laying awake all night and she hadn't slept a wink. She would hear the click of the hatch opening. She would feel that panic. She would look up and the dog would be there. Over time, she sort of got into a routine with it. She was still terrified of it, but she knew that any time it got her, she just had to scream out, because every time, as soon as the sound would leave her mouth, the dog would release its grip and it would run away. A few years later, thankfully for her, the family decides to move to a different house. The father gets a better job, they move across town to a larger house, and she is so thankful. She knows, okay, whatever this was, it was clearly something with the house. It was something weird. I know it wasn't a dream. I know for a certainty it was real. But whatever it was, it has to be with the house, with that creepy attic, with that creepy hatch. As soon as we move to this new house, all of my problems will be solved. I'm never going to see this stupid dog again. She purposefully chooses a bedroom in the new house that's on the ground floor because she doesn't want to be anywhere near an attic. She wants to be on the ground floor, closer to her parents, not way up at the top of the house where nobody's around and weird things can happen. Like many houses in the UK, this house was very old, and like a lot of old houses over the years, they get remodeled and they get changed, and the layouts of the rooms change and the floor plans change, and sometimes you wind up with kind of weird floor plans in rooms. And that was the case with her room. The room that she was going to be staying in had sort of a strange corner. It kind of finished in a peak. I guess the layout of the room would be more similar to a pentagon instead of a square or a rectangle. But fortunately for her, and another reason why she picked this room is because there was no closet. But in this sort of alcove point of the room, there were these built-in cupboards, which was really just a tiny little space where you could put some pillows or some blankets or something like this. It wasn't a closet and it wasn't a hatch. It didn't really lead to anything, but all the other rooms had closets, and she did not want closets. She did not want hatches. She wanted as few doors to other places as possible. So this room was the ideal pick for her. And for a while, she moves into this room and she's not even thinking about the dog anymore. She's saying, I was right. This had nothing to do with me. This was that weird house that we were living in with the weird attic and the weird hatch. There's nothing weird about this house. I'm perfectly safe now. Someday I'm going to be able to look back on this and laugh. Until one night, a few months after they move in, she's laying awake at night, 1 in the morning, 2 in the morning, and she hears the door to the cupboard squeak open, and her heart drops. And she realizes, oh my God, it's back. I moved away and it somehow followed me or it found me. I don't know. I don't want to look at it though. I know what's there. I don't want to see it. I don't want to look at it. I thought I was done with it. Regardless, she looks up and she sees it. It's the same dog. The same coarse, dark, black, thick fur. The same glowing eyes, the same massive paws. It starts moving out of the cupboard. It jumps onto the ground, and she can hear the impact of these giant paws of this huge dog as it hits the ground and slowly start walking toward her. Just like the other times, again, she's petrified. She can't move. She knows that she needs to scream out for her parents. She knows that as soon as she does, the dog is going to run away. She tries to, she opens her mouth, but still nothing comes out. The dog comes closer and closer until it's a few feet away. And once it's a few feet away, the same thing. It leaps and it jumps onto her bed and it grabs her leg in its mouth and it starts pulling her, dragging her off of the bed and onto the floor. Once she's on the floor, again, she realizes that this dog is trying to drag her into the cupboard. Now, she doesn't know how this dog could have come out of the cupboard, but she knows that she doesn't want to go in there. Just as she's getting closer and closer to the cupboard, she's almost made it to the cupboard. She finds the ability to scream out. She screams as loud as she can, louder than ever before, for her parents to come and save her. And as soon as she does, the dog drops her and she hears it run away. She's heartbroken. She thought for sure once we moved away, I would never see this dog again. That was going to be the end of it. I would never have to see it. I would never have to think about it. I would never have to see its mouth on my legs. I would never have to think about how its head feels when I punch it or when I pull its fur. But she realizes no such luck. This dog is very much still around. And it goes on. And over the next couple of years, the same things would happen. She would see the dog, it would attack her. Before she got pulled into the cupboard, she would find the ability to scream out. The dog would drop her, it would run away, and her parents would run in. When the girl turns 12, her father comes to her and says, as a birthday present to you, I'm going to remodel your room completely however you want it. You want me to knock down walls? I'll knock down walls. I'll paint it. I'll do whatever you want. Just tell me what to do. It'll take me about a month or so, but I'll do it for you. And the first thing she says is, I want you to get rid of those cupboards. I do not want any doors, any drawers, any cupboards, nothing at all in my room. I want the door to get in the room and get out the room, and that is all. He says, perfect, I can do that. It'll take me a few weeks. Until then, you can sleep up on the second floor with your brother. Her brother was a few years younger than her, so he was 9 and she was 12. And in his room, there were bunk beds, so it kind of worked out fine. She wasn't super crazy about sharing a room with her little brother, but for a few weeks it would do, especially if the payoff was that maybe there's a chance that once these renovations are done, I will never see that dog again. Even if it's a 1 in 100, 1 in 1,000 chance, those are fine odds to me. A couple of weeks after they start sharing the room, she's laying awake. It's the middle of the night. She has that very familiar feeling of dread pushing on her heart, pushing down on her chest. And she's thinking, man, I just know what's coming, but I don't want it to happen because I don't want my little brother to see this. And she's praying, please, if anyone is listening to me, please don't let this happen while I'm staying in my little brother's room. I can't let him see this. It's too terrifying. It's too traumatizing. Please don't let it happen. Nonetheless, as she's laying awake late at night, she hears the closet door. She hears it creak open, and she knows what's going to be there. As usual, she's too scared to look. She's absolutely petrified. She wants to scream out, to warn her little brother, to tell him to run, to tell him to get help, get mom and dad, but she knows that she can't. She's absolutely petrified. She opens her mouth, nothing comes out. She hears the paws moving across the room. She's just waiting to hear a blood-curdling scream from her little brother as soon as he sees this thing and is scarred for life. But she doesn't hear anything other than heavy paws moving across the room. It moves closer and closer and closer, and then she hears the sound of those paws on the ladder going up to the top bunk. She hears it start to climb extremely slowly. And then she starts to see over the foot of the bed a massive black head of a massive black dog with glowing red eyes staring at her. As soon as she sees the glowing eyes, she finds the courage. She screams out louder than ever before. As usual, the dog takes off as soon as she screams. And by the time her parents come in, it's completely gone. The next morning, she's woken by the sound of footsteps on her ladder again, but fortunately this time it's her little brother who's climbing up the ladder to wake her up and tell her good morning. And she's a little bit embarrassed because she had screamed so loud the night before, and so before her brother can even open his mouth, she starts going off about the dog. She's saying, oh my God, I'm so sorry that I screamed. I pray that you didn't see the same thing I did. For years, I've been seeing this massive black dog, and he comes out of closets, and he comes out of cupboards, and he comes at me, and I don't know what to do. And he just says, I know. And then he lifts up his other hand, and in his hand is a big tuft of coarse black fur. And of course, she is absolutely speechless because she had started to question her own sanity. In her mind, it was real, but she couldn't know for sure. Maybe her parents were right. Maybe it was just a dream. Maybe it was just sleepwalking. But here it is, a tuft of coarse black fur. She takes the fur to her mother and she says, "Look, Mom, I told you I was not going crazy. I told you I wasn't sleepwalking. I told you that this was real. This is from the dog. This is why I screamed last night. The dog was in there, and then my little brother found this in his bed." And the mom takes the fur and throws it in the trash and doesn't say anything. And she sort of wondered after that. Was it that my mom didn't believe me? Or was it that she knew something that I didn't?